Brad thought his power was his greatest weapon, but Maya proved that determination and a strong mentality are the true strengths. But when faced with defeat, will Brad learn this valuable lesson? Follow Brad and Maya's next journey. Who do you think will win this confrontation? Like, share, and leave your comments below. Maya stood still, her hands clenched into fists in the pockets of her hoodie, feeling her every breath echo in the quiet space. Each footstep echoed in the dark night. All she could hear was the gentle wind blowing through the cracks of the old windows and the footsteps of someone approaching. A chill ran down her spine. Even though she couldn't see clearly, Maya knew for sure that she wasn't alone here. Nothing made her more alert than being watched in the dark. The feeling seemed to pass by every second, growing more and more distinct like a ghost drawing closer. She didn't move, didn't change her expression, only her eyes, sharp, alert, scanned the space around her, searching for movement, for some signal. The footsteps grew closer. A shadowy figure appeared in the darkness. Maya still didn't move. A sense of tension permeated the air. Everything was quiet, but it was clear that something was wrong. Suddenly, from outside the warehouse door, there was a slight noise. It was the sound of a car engine, as if someone was approaching. Maya turned, not in a hurry, but her every move was carefully calculated. It wasn't just the darkness, but also an undefined threat. Brad's patrol car stopped right in front of the warehouse. The yellow light from the car illuminated the darkness, casting a faint, dusty shadow. Brad frowned as he looked toward the warehouse door where Maya stood. This strange feeling was not at all like the patrols he usually did. His eyes narrowed, and part of him felt that something was wrong. He rolled down the window and stepped out. His steps, unhurried but filled with suspicion. His eyes lingered on Maya, taking in her but finding no clear answer. A woman, not at all suspicious, standing in the middle of the night in a deserted warehouse like this? "Why are you here at this hour?" Brad asked, his voice strange, a little rude, as if he was trying to assert his authority in his question. Maya didn't answer right away. She held her position, her eyes coldly watching him. There was a long silence between them. She didn't show fear, not at all. Training, she said. Not hurried, not panicked. The words were short but defiant. The words made it difficult for Brad to satisfy his suspicions. The feeling of discomfort spread through Brad. He smirked, trying to create a sense of control, but instead felt an inexplicable resistance. "Don't joke. You can't be here," he said, his voice sounding impatient. "This is a restricted area. You're violating it." Maya still didn't take her eyes off him. She stood up straight, took a deep breath, then answered back, her voice soft but not lacking in determination. "If I violate, you can call more people, but I'm not afraid of you." A challenge, just as she wanted. Brad blinked, annoyed. Her eyes were like a sharp knife, gliding over him with a calmness he couldn't understand. He couldn't stand to be disrespected like that. "Then let's try," Brad said, taking a step forward, his hand gripping the baton, his eyes starting to tense. "Do you think you can continue standing here without consequences?" Maya did not move. She looked straight into his eyes, her eyes as dark as a deep pit, fearless. But in them, there was a look that was like a warning. If he continued, there would be no turning back. Brad couldn't understand why Maya was so calm. She stood there, unafraid, showing no sign of panic despite his clear warnings. For him, maintaining power was everything, and this was being tested beyond belief. He felt slighted and couldn't stand it. Maya looked at him with a piercing gaze. She had no intention of explaining because, in her eyes, Brad's presence was just an obstacle. There was nothing more to say. "Don't waste my time," she said, her tone cold. "I didn't do anything wrong. You're just wasting yours." Brad smirked, unable to bear the challenge in her words. Some part of him, his ego and pride as a policeman, urged him to act, to make Maya bow to him. He stepped closer, his hand gripping the baton, ready to strike. He thought that a good whack would change her attitude. Maya didn't move. She stood straight, looking straight into his eyes. In those silent moments, there was an unspoken confrontation between them, not with blows, but with looks and determination. Just as the baton was about to swing down, Maya moved quickly, dodging to the side like a gust of wind. She had anticipated Brad's action, not hasty, but too quick for him to react. Brad tried to regain his balance, his eyes filled with anger, but that couldn't take away the coldness in the way Maya dealt with him. She just looked at him, her eyes cold as ice. "You think a whack will scare me?" she asked. It wasn't just a question, it was a challenge, a clear warning. Brad felt himself losing his footing more and more. He was beginning to realize that this confrontation wasn't as simple as he thought. Maya wasn't just dealing with him physically. She was fighting with a calmness and intelligence that he had never faced before. Brad couldn't stop. Underneath his policeman's proud facade, anger was boiling inside him. He felt mocked, underestimated, and it was unacceptable. His eyes narrowed, one hand gripping the baton, the other clenched into a fist. He approached Maya, each step heavy, his demeanor tense. Maya stood firm, unmoving. She knew for sure that Brad wouldn't stop, that he wouldn't give up this confrontation easily. And that was why she was prepared. Brad took a deep breath, refusing to let himself be defeated by her calmness. He swung the baton at Maya again, a quick, determined swing. This time the blow wasn't just a challenge, it was uncontrollable anger. But Maya was too fast. She had seen his move long ago. She only ducked slightly, avoiding Brad's swing as if he were hitting the air. Just a small movement, but it made Brad completely lose his footing. The moment he lost his balance, Maya did not miss the opportunity. She lifted her foot, pushing hard into his chest, making Brad take a few steps back. However, she did not attack further. She stood there, cold, just watching him. Brad was hit by a feeling of panic. Every moment he felt himself losing ground, a feeling he had never felt before, and he did not like it. It felt as if he was facing someone he could not control, an opponent who had no fear. Every step he took was calculated by Maya. He knew that if he didn't make a stronger move, he would not be able to achieve anything. "Is that enough?" Maya asked again, but this time her voice was sharper. Her eyes seemed to dissect his every emotion. Maya knew that this was more than just a physical confrontation. It was a battle between patience and pride. Brad was furious, but there was no denying one thing: he was feeling weak. Shame and anger were starting to rise. He couldn't let a woman, whom he saw as a small opponent, get past him so easily. But her strength, the coldness in her eyes, the way she controlled the situation made him face the truth. He had misjudged her. "Not everyone is as weak as you think," Maya continued, not giving him a chance to argue. "And I've met more dangerous men than you, Brad." Maya didn't move, just stood there, as if her composure was an indelible reminder to him. She didn't need to say another word. Brad couldn't take it anymore. Every word from Maya, her cold gaze, was like an arrow shot straight into his pride. He felt like he was on the verge of defeat, and it was unacceptable. His anger rose, like an uncontrollable storm. He shouted loudly, "Who do you think you are to dare stand in front of me testing me like this?" Without reason, Brad swung his baton again, this time not only with anger but also with determination. He wanted to end this confrontation immediately. The baton swung, creating a gust of air that tore through the darkness of the night. But Maya was too familiar with situations like this. She was not just a former intelligence agent. She had experienced many more difficult challenges. This path was not new to her. Brad's every move was predictable, his every reaction tirelessly repeated. When the baton came flying, Maya did not dodge. She took the initiative to move forward, lightning fast. Just as the baton was about to touch her body, Maya grabbed Brad's hand, holding the baton tightly in his grip. His feeling was one of complete loss. Brad stood rooted to the spot, unable to continue attacking, but also unable to retreat. The strength in his hand had completely disappeared. Maya was not in a hurry, just slowly holding Brad's hand, causing the baton to fall to the ground. Her eyes were cold, without any expression. "If you don't let go," Maya said, her voice calm but sharp, "I won't be patient anymore." Brad felt the coldness in her words. He was not a weak person, but at this moment he felt like a hunted animal. He looked into Maya's eyes, saw the determination, and realized that he was facing an opponent he could not defeat. A feeling of shame and humiliation spread through him, as if a part of his ego had been thrown away. His pride, the ego he had always been proud of, was gradually being shattered. He couldn't give up, but he couldn't continue either. Maya stood there, unhurried, her cold eyes following Brad's figure as he silently turned and walked away. His footsteps echoed in the quiet space of the warehouse, each step like the end of a chapter in his life, a chapter he never thought he would have to go through. Brad paused for a moment, breathing heavily as if he had just overcome a huge wave. Every beat in his chest was still pounding, but his heart was no longer as steady as before. The feeling of pride, the wounds in his heart, all began to show. He had been proud of his strength, of the power he could impose on others. But now, the feeling of losing control, the shame, was taking over him. He didn't turn back. He couldn't. The feeling of shame was so great that he didn't dare to look back at Maya, didn't dare to face her cold, determined gaze. Mia did not seem satisfied with her victory. She just stood there, looking at him as if everything had been decided. There was no need to show off, no need to laugh at the failure of others. Brad walked away, but the defeat inside him could not be erased. The feeling of loss spread through his body like a wound that could not be healed. Each step he took seemed to lead him into an abyss he never thought he would fall into. Everything he had thought about himself, about power, now seemed like a broken mask. His pride, stubbornness, and past wrong decisions now weighed heavily on his shoulders. He did not turn around, but in his heart a question kept nagging him. How could I have let myself be so weak? It was a question he could not answer, not just because of the defeat in this match, but the failure in his own view of himself, of what he thought was right, and the values he had always defended. Maya had not only defeated him physically, she had won his inner battle, making him realize that strength does not come from imposing, from mastering others. True strength is knowing when to let go, knowing how to control yourself when faced with challenges. He continued walking in the dark, but he was no longer a proud warrior. He had lost everything, not because he had lost, but because he no longer knew how to stand firm after this defeat. It was not Maya who had brought him down. He had lost himself. Brad's footsteps gradually faded away in the quiet night. Those footsteps echoed like a declaration of war against himself, like an admission that every battle cannot always be won, And sometimes one must learn to accept defeat in a painful way. Maya still stood there, watching Brad, but there was no sense of victory, no joy. She was not the one who had created this defeat for him. All she did was protect herself, maintain her steadfastness in difficult moments. But now she realized that strength comes not only from facing the enemy, but also from facing herself. Maya turned and walked away, but in her heart she told herself that every battle, whether won or lost, has valuable lessons. And sometimes the greatest victory is when you know when to stop. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Don't forget to follow us so you don't miss any stories, because there's a lot of exciting things ahead.